Patrolling Solo, my name is Adam Smith, and I am very excited today to be checking out RoboMon. As you can see here on the table, this comes from Gabe Barrett and is published by Best With One. Now, both the designer and publisher should be popping out to you because I've covered games from this individual before on the channel. Some very fast-paced solo games were released into the wild through crowdfunding. The Hunted series, if you remember, the Kabashi Tower and Mining Colony 415 were two solo games which I covered on the channel, and this individual has put out other games as well. This, however, is a very different venture than anything this individual has ever done before. Gabe has gone the extra mile this time around and has created an exploration-focused, story-driven, open-world game of robot combat. Now, when I say that, you can look at the box and you get a vibe of Pokemon just out of the art itself. And that's exactly what the angle of this game was going for in terms of its feel. So if you have any kind of interest in Pokemon present, past, or future, this game is going to be of high interest. The design of this game is very much attached to the theme of what you'd expect to see in like a video game, like a Game Boy game, for instance, or anything along those lines of Pokemon games released over the years. You're going to feel right at home here with this as it follows that type of feel. However, it is its own universe, it is its own world to explore, but if you like that Pokemon vibe, this is going to fit the bill unlike anything else out there. The backstory for RoboMon is all around a series of wars and climate events. Most of the world's animals went extinct, so RoboMon were invented to piece the environment and ecosystems back together. But it wasn't long before people figured out they could be reprogrammed for some pretty sweet robot battles. You pick things up 50 years after the world has been put back together and you take on the role of a brand new RoboMon trainer exploring the world and attempting to become a fully licensed RoboMon ranger and the greatest trainer on the planet. The game is going to have you explore the book of maps, and you're going to work your way through an adventure book to complete quests, solve puzzles, and defeat gym leaders. You're going to try to earn enough badges to become a fully licensed RoboMon Ranger and win the game overall. Now, each game session can literally take 5 minutes or 5 hours. It really depends on how long you want to play. But the best thing about this campaign game, and the box you're seeing here is prototype. So thickness-wise, this is going to increase in size. It's not going to have miniatures though, so it's just going to be chocked full of content. Now, what's really cool about this is the fact that setup times are extremely streamlined for a campaign game. Picking up from your save state is really easy, as you're going to be using character sheets and other means of using journals to keep track of what you have going on, but all in a very concise manner so it's not sprawling all over your tabletop to the point it's going to take up a ton of time. So this is the kind of game you're going to be able to pull out, play for hours, play for 15-30 minutes, put it away, bring it back out, and not have those kind of issues in terms of downtime. So if you'll join me as we go through this game overview and gameplay video, you are going to watch me as I go through it for the very first time. I've heard quite a bit about what this game has to offer, which has gotten my excitement up way too high, and that has been a level of excitement that has lasted throughout this entire year waiting for this prototype to arrive. I cannot wait to show you what this game has to offer and really hope it helps you to make an informed decision whether this is for you or not. So without further ado, let's dive into gameplay. One thing that you noticed as I went through the intro is I was not showing off all the components that come inside the box. This game is special and unique in that you're not supposed to punch out any tokens or take anything out of the box until instructed. It even says this right on the first game tutorial page in the important section there. So you're going to be grabbing only what is requested to be pulled out, which means this learn to play as you play experience is really going to be piece by piece. So you're not going to be overburdened with tons of things to set up, tons of things to comprehend. It's going to come out naturally and organically as you play through the game. So we're going to start off at the very first step, and you'll also notice there will be QR codes throughout the game, and sometimes these are going to tag to different elements of the game, but in most cases it's going to tie to some music, background music that applies to the area that you're currently in. You're going to hear some of that background music as we go through this video. So starting off with the very first step, you're going to take a character sheet out and you're going to take the character sticker sheets out. There's a whole bunch of characters to choose from, tons. And you're going to be able to technically choose anything even outside of these character sheets as well. If you don't want to use any of these stickers whatsoever for any reason, you can literally use a portrait of yourself. You can find a sticker from a different game. You can do whatever you want. That sticker or that drawing or that portrait, whatever you have, you can place it right in this area on the character sheet. I've gone ahead and put a sticker representing my character as well as a name in the top left-hand corner. Now we'll take a look at those stats on the right-hand side. During your adventure, you're going to encounter lots of skill checks that are going to test your strength, intelligence, agility, charisma, and endurance. Now at the start of the game, you get values -1, 0, 0, +1, and +2. Those 5 values have to be placed inside of the 5 boxes here. And of course, you can't duplicate any of those. It's just one use for each attribute, but you get to pick which one goes where. So you could choose to put the +2 in whichever of the attributes you want to be the strongest. And you're going to have to put a -1 in one of them, zeros in 2 of them, and then a +1 somewhere else. Just like that, my values have been placed for my different skills. This was quite tough to decide. I put my strength at 0, my intelligence at +2, agility at -1, charisma at 0, and endurance at +1. So as you'd expect, these values are going to act as modifiers when you roll dice for skill checks. So we'll see that play out as we go along. Now at this point, we're going to go through about 7 to 8 steps, removing all components as required from the first game tutorial sheet in terms of different items that need to be removed from the box to the table in order to be set up in a particular pattern. Again, that's all laid out on the sheet you saw earlier. I'm going to skip right to the end of that setup. Here's a look at the entirety of the setup from the very beginning. So you can see here at the very top, we have some punch boards. These punch boards in the prototype have loose components sitting inside the punch boards. In other words, you don't have to physically punch them out. They are just resting inside the punch boards themselves with a dual layered system. So if you were to flip that tile over, those circle tokens would come flying out. If you flipped over the square ones, same thing. Basically keeping those in numerical order up in the top left-hand corner and just in stacks, circle versus square is good enough. Underneath those, we have piles of tokens. We'll go through what those are once we hit gameplay. We have a RoboMon deck, which is the first deck on the left. Then we have a versus deck. Then we have an adventure deck. And then finally on the far right, a journal deck. You're not shuffling any of these as they're numbered. You can see them in the top left-hand corner. So you're just taking them straight out of the box, placing them on the table, good to go. The box base inside the prototype is used. The box lid in the final version is used to be put up in the top right hand corner. You'll see a little bit of a targeting system up there. We'll talk more about that later on. And then we've got on the far left hand side here the map book. We have the adventure book with the narrative going on. We have our character sheet, which is off screen, but you saw that earlier to the far right, and dice. You also want to leave some space along the bottom for your RoboMon team cards that will come down the line. The first thing we need to do is open up the MacBook to page 1, which I have gone ahead and done. You'll see the page number in the bottom left-hand corner. You're also going to see an icon in the top left-hand corner. And when you see that particular icon, it's going to let you know that there is something you need to do inside the adventure book immediately. So what you do is you take the number of that entry, which is 10, and you add 01 to the end of it. So you take, whenever you see one of these symbols, you take that number, take the page number, combine them, and that is the entry you find inside the adventure book. So that is going to lead us to this entry right here, 1001, which actually begins with a comic, and you're going to see some pretty cool stuff going through this adventure book. It's not just narrative text forever. There's going to be comic entries in here. There's going to be puzzles. There's going to be all kinds of interesting things that are going to pop up as you go along. At the very top of the comic, it says, "Good luck out there. Today's the day I finally get to meet my very first RoboMon. And we're heading to Gramps Mechanics." It says, "Hey champ, looks like you're right on time." Oh, I remember back when I was just starting out as a RoboMon Ranger in training. Of course, that was many moons ago, and long before everything got standardized. We lost a lot of good kids out there. But honestly, who lets a 10-year-old go out into the wild on their own? Anyway, now that you are 17 and eligible for a Ranger program, I am just so proud to see the person you've become. And I know you're going to do great. But before you go, you need to pick a RoboMon to go with you on your journey. So here are your options. And at this point, it's telling us to go to the RoboMon deck, grab 1, 4, and 7. Do you want Gustwing, the air type? It's one of the smarter RoboMon and can help you figure things out. It can also fly, which makes it more versatile in battle. Or do you want Pandol, the fire type? It's one of the stronger RoboMon, can help you move heavy objects. It can also push RoboMon around to give you space in battles. Or do you want Willowhair, the nature type? It's one of the more agile RoboMon and can help you get around obstacles. It's also nimble, which helps it move faster in battles. We get to select one of these cards, so I gotta make a hard choice right now. I ended up choosing Willowhair as my starting RoboMon, and Graham says, now that's a very good choice. I had one of those when I was your age, although to be fair, I ended up having one of all of them when I was your age. And then he laughs at me. Oh, that reminds me, I used to have a journal that I carried with me everywhere I went, and inside it I kept drawings and detailed notes on all the RoboMon I saw and worked with, but somewhere over the years it got lost. So please do your old Graham a favor and take this journal with you. Every time you add a RoboMon to your team, you'll be able to add a new page to your journal. So at this point, it is instructing us to take the journal tuck box, draw the journal card for the RoboMon that we just chose, which is Willowhair, and we place it inside the journal box. Finding the journal card for the RoboMon that I chose, very easy. I know that this card is 007 as it states on the far left hand side, so I went and found the exact same card journal-wise, it's 007. This is going to go inside the journal tuck box. The reason I have all these other tuck boxes out is because I wanted to show you that all the decks that I set up across the top row at the beginning of the game all came inside of tuck boxes. So you'll have these to place cards inside of if the game tells you to do so. So in this case, it's telling us to place this card inside this journal tuck box, but there is something else to mention. There is going to be a deluxe version of this game during the crowdfunding campaign that's going to come with an even better journal. Here is a journal in its prototype form, which was included as part of the overall prototype for the crowdfunding campaign. So this is subject to change, but we're going to go ahead and take this card, the journal card for the RoboMon we just got, and throw it inside. Taking a look inside the journal, you're going to see that I've placed the journal card actually in the 7th position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because it is number 7, it's going in that position. You don't have to do this. This is just because I'm a little crazy. It's worth mentioning that the RoboMon I didn't choose that came from that RoboMon deck just went back into that deck. So that was card number 001 and 004 back inside the far leftmost deck. Now, just before I go, Gramps wants to do a quick RoboMon battle to show us the ropes, and he's going to use his old friend Sparky. He's not a registered RoboMon since he built him in his garage, but he makes a good training buddy. So now we're going to draw card 001 from the Versus deck. I revealed the Versus card as it mentioned. It is Sparky, the 4 stat down, and the column on the left-hand side it mentions 30 next to a green icon. That's the speed of Sparky, that RoboMon. And mine, Willowhair, is 70, as you can see on the side of the card. So I get to go first. So I'm going to go ahead and put a number 1 red token next to my RoboMon, and number 2 next to Sparky. Now on Sparky's card, in the stat area, you're going to see 2 green arrows pointing to the right with a 4 beside it. And that is going to determine the amount of movement that Sparky has, but this only matters in a competitive battle when you're moving around on a gridded map. This is considered a wild battle, what we're doing right now, so there's no grid to worry about this time. Taking a look at Sparky's card, you'll see at the very top of the column of stats there, a gear symbol in gray. There's a 7 beside it. That lets us know we need 7 damage to take Sparky down. However, he also has 1 armor token, and each armor token prevents 2 damage. So we're going to have to take care of that first. And it's also worth mentioning that armor is all or nothing, so you have to do 2 or more damage to remove the token. Just to be clear, the armor is going to absorb the first points of damage, but anything that goes over does damage. So if you do 3 damage to Sparky, the armor token would be discarded and you would place 1 damage token onto his card. Now in the wild, you have a limited amount of time to reprogram a wild RoboMon before it runs off on you, and each RoboMon has a number next to an hourglass icon to tell you how much time you have. You'll see Sparky's is infinity. Now how does this work? Well, whenever you roll a die, you're going to put 1 or more hourglass icons that you get face up on the card. In this case, you can see Sparky has an infinity symbol next to it because, well, it can just take infinity numbers worth of those hourglasses. There's no effect here, but there are going to be RoboMon you'll find in the wild which will have an actual number, and then that RoboMon is going to run away for good. Normally you can only have 2 active RoboMon during a battle. In this case we only have Willowhair, so it doesn't really matter because we only have 1 in the first place. Now a battle takes place over a series of rounds and only ends when the wild RoboMon is either defeated, reprogrammed, or it runs off, as we just talked about. Now if you decide you want the battle to be over for any reason, you can also just let the RoboMon go. You're not tied to it. Now that turn order has been decided, we're going to go ahead and roll the 7 action dice to see what actions are available to us. So let's go ahead and roll those dice right now. For this example, I've gone ahead and preset the dice. I did not roll this because I want to walk through the icons with you. Now, if you roll any hourglasses, you just go ahead and add tokens to Sparky's card. Just get in the habit of doing this, and any dice with a movement icon can be completely discarded, as you only need those in competitive battles, which I'm sure someone in town will let you know about. But as of right now, this is not part of the equation. Now, after that, we can group the rest of the dice together and go through them. Just like that, we've gone ahead and added 2 hourglasses to Sparky. Again, no impact here as Sparky's not going to run away with the infinity symbol next to the icon on Sparky's card anyway, but we're doing this because it will matter out in the wild later on. Now, moving forward with the rest of the icons, the little red explosion that I have there means a basic attack, the stars mean a special attack, the shields mean a block, and the plugs are wilds. Now, each of the active RoboMon that you have, and again, it could be 2, but in this case is 1, receives a square attack defend token with the red explosion star on the front, and then if you flip it over, you have a defend with movement and a shield on the other side. Now you can select which side of the token to use, attack or defend, anytime after rolling the action dice like we just did. And on the RoboMon's turn, you may use any of the face-up icons on its token in addition to the action dice. So this is going to allow you to get some icons that you might not have gotten with your action dice, or to maybe bolster and get additional of the icons that you already got from the action dice. The tokens refresh at the beginning of each round and can be reused. Now let's focus on the RoboMon card that we are controlling, which is Willow Hair in the top right hand corner. We talked about this with Sparky. There's a gear symbol. This lets us know how many hit points the RoboMon has overall. When the RoboMon takes damage, you place that many damage token on the card. If the damage equals or is greater than what's on the card, the RoboMon is knocked out of the battle and you'll have to repair it before you can use it in another one. The plug icon underneath is all about power. It indicates how much power this RoboMon has. So we're going to go ahead and place that many power tokens on the RoboMon's card. If you spend power equal to or greater than this over the course of the battle, the RoboMon powers down is out of the battle. Now RoboMon regain all their power after the battle though. And now we'll move to the red icon down below, which is a basic attack called Slice for this one. So now let's go over the basic attacks and how they work. So if you want to use a basic attack at this point, you're going to go ahead and spend an icon or icons that match the ability you're trying to use. So in this case, Slice has one of the red basic attack icons, which means we can either use one of the icons that we have here between either this token or the die in order to trigger it, or we could use both if we wish. Now, how does that work? Well, if you're only using one of the red symbols that we have, then we only get the damage in the very first area, which is just 1. If we go ahead and use both of the red icons, we're going to get 3, and if we happen to have had 3 red icons, we could have gone all the way up to 5 with that basic attack. Now, not just the spending of these red symbols is required. As you can see, there are plugs here for power. So that is where the power of the RoboMon is going to start draining down as you make these attacks, and you're going to have to strategize as to when to do them. Something else worth mentioning about a basic attack is you also add in the black die, which has sides that can either hurt you in terms of dropping down the value, or it could potentially boost your attack, which is really good. So you're going to add that on top of what you're doing. So in this case, if I go ahead and decide to do a basic attack, and I choose to use this token and this die here, that is going to use this one. This is going to also use this one, which I'll flip over and exhaust. This does come back at the end of the round. This I'm doing in order to get up to that level 3 because I'm using 2 icons. I also have to pay 2 power from the available power that I have up top. So we're going to go ahead and take that away. That's going to give us 3 going in, and then we're going to roll this black die to modify it, and hopefully it's going to go up. Okay, it ended up being a 0, so it's exactly 3. Now, remember, I told you that Sparky had a shield on it, so you can see it right in the stat line there. So we're going to place a shield there because it is going to absorb some of the damage. So 3 damage going to Sparky for that basic attack is going to be 2 absorbed into the shield, removing that out of the equation, and only 1 damage actually getting through. And the good news is the shield is now gone, which means all the damage we start doing towards Sparky going forward is going to go straight towards its overall hit points. And it's worth mentioning that if you do a basic attack on your turn, like I just did, you cannot do a special attack on that same turn too. Now let's talk about special attacks. Those are the ones with the star icon on your RoboMon. You can see it, it's the second row down, called a Vine Whip. Now attacks your RoboMon's card will always have the star symbol on them. You discard one of these icons and the indicated number of power tokens to do an attack. Exact same idea in terms of the basic attack. You can add more stars to the equation if it bumps up the value of damage that it's doing. Same thing applies. Now special attacks have a RoboMon type associated with them. So they're either fire, water, nature, ice, electricity, earth, or air. The attack may do more or less damage depending on the type of RoboMon the special attack actually hits. And if you do a special attack on a turn, you may not do a basic attack on that turn. Similar ideas to what I mentioned with basic attacks moments ago. Now, most RoboMon have a type based on what role they have in the world, and you can see a number of those types, well, all of them inside this prototype on the left-hand side in the column of this chart. And in combat, different types have advantages or disadvantages against other types. So you'll roll the modifier die based on this, and here is exactly how those things break down. It mentions an example right underneath the chart. It says type only comes into play when a special ability is used. So for example, if a fire type uses a fire ability against a nature type, it has advantage. You can see here a fire type has advantage against nature, but it does not have advantage against water type, for instance. So now let's talk about modifier dice in relation to special abilities and the types, the disadvantage and advantage that I just talked about. Now, when a RoboMon uses a special ability, the star type, that has an advantage against another RoboMon based on its type, you actually roll a green modifier die, which is going to be a lot better into the equation. This die is going to add additional damage to the attack, and if you roll a crit result, you multiply the ability's damage by 2 and roll the die again, add the new result to the total, and this may repeat as many times as you happen to roll that crit result. Now, when a RoboMon uses a special ability with a type that has a disadvantage against another RoboMon, you're obviously going to roll a different modifier die that is not going to be so great. This one's going to have negative values all over top of it, and if you roll the miss result, the attack misses entirely, and it's the next RoboMon's turn. When a RoboMon uses a special ability with a type that has neither advantage or disadvantage against the RoboMon, you roll the black modifier die. This die may add or subtract damage. So remember that black one that I used moments ago? If you neither have advantage or disadvantage, then you do not use the red or the green, you're using the black die. Now, Sparky here does not have a type at all. There's no icon to the left of the name whatsoever, so in this case, you would just roll a black neutral die and add or subtract the result depending on what's rolled. Couple things to mention here to wrap up this demo battle. Ongoing abilities, there are such things. There are RoboMon out there that have abilities or effects that are considered ongoing. They can be utilized without discarding icons like we just saw in examples moments ago. And these abilities include the ability to change dice, move in various ways, increase shield values, all kinds of other different things like that. And these abilities typically have a power cost and they may only be used once per round. Now there's also icons you're going to run into like crosshairs. That icon, which is kind of a red crosshair, you're also going to find a blue hand that looks like it's pushing away. There's other icons as well. These are used in competitive battles, so we can kind of skip over this for now. Worth mentioning, you might see stuff like that, but we'll go ahead and pass by this. And something else to mention is that, again, this battle, this example battle we're doing here is a wild battle. We have wild battles and you have competitive battles. Now, in a wild battle, all RoboMon are considered to be adjacent to each other, so all of them can interact. So now let's go ahead and resolve the rest of the combat round. So we were in the middle of Willowhair's turn and we resolved a number of dice. Then I did a basic attack. Now after you do a basic attack, on the same turn you can't do a special attack. So that makes this star not useful anymore. So we'll just move this out of the way. So we have these 2 dice left. So we have one here that gives us armor of 2, which is great because now when Sparky tries to attack us, when his turn comes around next, we're going to be able to try and defend against it before it starts hitting our hit points. We also have this power icon here. Basically, this is a wild. Really awesome. We can spend 1 power from our allotment here in order to change that die to anything else. So I could change it to more armor if I really wanted to try to soak up damage. So now let's go ahead and continue resolving the rest of Willowhair's turn here. So we've already gone ahead and resolved some dice. We've also gone ahead and done a basic attack. I still have some dice to resolve here, but remember, on your turn, when your RoboMon is attacking, if you've already done a basic attack, you can't do a special attack. So that makes this star completely useless to me. So we'll move that off to the side. We have 2 left to use. 1 provides me with armor, which is going to be great for when Sparky tries to make an attack against us. So we're keeping that. And then this one here is a wild, this power icon. Now you can spend 1 power to change this to anything you want. So I could have, prior to my basic attack that I did earlier, where all I mustered was 1 red here and another red off a die, I could have spent 1 power to change this to a red, and that would have ticked this up to 5 for our hit, which would have ended up resulting in the damage on Sparky going from 1 up to 3, actually. Again, remember, he had armor originally. So, probably should have done that, but that's part of the learning of the game. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to decide not to actually change this to anything. I don't think I really want to get 4 armor. Just taking a look at the different attacks that can come my way from Sparky, it's looking like 1, 2s, and 1s. So I think because, again, this is one of the lower level intro RoboMon, we don't have as much to worry about here, but in the future, that might be a good idea to get those 2 armors going. So now Sparky gets to go, and how this works is we take a 4-sided die, which is very cool looking, and there's all 4 sides of it. We're going to go ahead and roll it, and that's going to determine the focus as well as the attack that's coming our way. So we got a 3, so we take a look up in the top right-hand corner of the card first for the focus. Resolving the 4-sided die to determine what Sparky will do in a given round is very easy. You take a look at the focus area here on the right-hand side. There are 4 entries. We look for the 3rd one. We follow through the row in terms of who Sparky is focusing on. A fire-type Pokemon, well, that doesn't exist in this battle. And then wind or air, that doesn't exist. So it's going to be going after Willowhair regardless, but that will give you the order of operations. There's other ones in here like the fastest moving. If the arrow's pointing up, we're using the movement icon, the one below in the 2nd row there is for the hit points, the lowest remaining hit points. And then you can see row number 4 there has another breakdown by type. So anyway, we know this attack's coming to Willowhair anyway because there's only one other person to attack here, or another RoboMon to attack. So now we use the 3 in the bottom section to figure out which ability it is. Quite easy as well. Take a look. 2 to 3 is a tackle, and you'll see right there it states 2 damage coming to me. But the good news is I do have some armor, and that's going to soak that all up. But we do get a modifier die, a black one for Sparky, because Sparky does not have a type associated. So when there's no type associated, a black die is what you get. So no advantage or disadvantage situation going on there. So let's find out if there's any plus or minus or nothing involved. Oh, -1. So even worse for Sparky. Definitely not getting through the armor. And just like that, that is a full round of combat when dealing with RoboMon in the wild. And at the end of a round, when each have taken their turn, you're going to refresh. So the token will come back, your die pool will refresh, ready for the next round, and you go at it again. So again, you're going to take it down, or at least you're trying to take that RoboMon down and not be taken down yourself. But at the same time, in the wild, there's a potential for the RoboMon to run away. So there's always that as well. Now, you actually, in the tutorial of this prototype, go all the way through until there's a victory. But in this particular case, I'm going to skip right past that. We're going to resolve it as if we were successful for the sake of time and move on with our adventure. Now, it's safe to say that you're going to face RoboMon out in the wild that will be a lot more dangerous than Sparky, and there'll be all sorts of different types and different challenges when you fight them. But if you play it smart, you can counter anything they throw at you. So at this point in time, the adventure book is telling us to draw card 001 from the adventure deck. The game provides you with the chart that you saw inside the booklet that I just showed as a reference card that you can always keep close at hand, because knowing disadvantage and advantage, well, it is very handy information. So now that we know how to battle a wild RoboMon, we are going to try and find one. But first, we need a RoboMon tracker. So we grab the particular sticker that says RM Tracker on it, and we're going to place it in one of the 5 gray slots on the far right-hand side on the back of the character sheet. Along your journey, you're going to find several special items that will open up a whole bunch of new opportunities for you. With one of these, you're going to be able to see which RoboMon are in the area, and you'll be able to track them down. You just got to be aware the tracker uses a whole bunch of power, so you're going to need to keep lots of batteries on hand to keep it charged up. So at this point, we're gaining 5 batteries. So I've gone ahead and gained 5 batteries. I'll actually be flipping this sheet back over to the other side, but I want to make mention of this. This is used on the back side of the character sheet as your save sheet. So when you save the game, you'll see there's a battery section there, and to the right-hand side, there's a blank space. That's where you're going to write down how many batteries you have. This, in essence, allows you to pack this game up really quickly and then be able to put it right back out and get right back into the mix quite nicely without all kinds of dealing with components and everything else. Of course, you could keep them in a Ziploc bag if you wish, but this character sheet makes things a lot easier for tracking. During gameplay, you can just place the batteries anywhere near your character sheet. For now, I'll just place them up where my character picture is. So now that we have that fancy RM tracker, we're going to take a look at the map book here where it has an RM tracker right on it. So if we choose, we want to try and find some RoboMon in the area, we're going to take 2 6-sided dice, roll them, and then depending on what we get, we're going to go look at the chart and determine if it actually lands on anything that states versus, which will obviously show up as another RoboMon in the area. If we happen to get a blank, you can spend a battery to change the number by +1 or -1 to get there. So as an example here, we roll 2 6-sided dice and we get these results. Well, that would mean we get the versus 017 card. Now it happened to be a 1 and a 5. I could spend 1 battery in order to bring it up to a 1 and a 6 result if I was aiming to try to check that one out. And again, you can also spend multiple batteries on one die. So if you were at a 1 and a 4 and you really wanted to get to that 6, you could spend 2 batteries to change it to a 6. The one thing you can't do is if you're at a 1 result, you cannot, like this one right here, you can't spend a battery to -1 off of that result down to 0. Now that we understand how the RM tracker works, and just so you know, I'm not actually spending any batteries to use it, that was just an example, we're going to be talking about certificates, and you can earn certificates. There's 5 of them out there for completing various tasks related to being a ranger, because that is what we are trying to accomplish. And once you gain enough experience in each area, you'll be able to file your paperwork at the ranger kiosk and print off a certificate. As you go on your journey in RoboMon, you're going to be completing various tasks which will give you the points needed to meet or exceed these values next to search and rescue, mechanic, investigation, research, and exploration. Once you meet or exceed them, then you head to that ranger kiosk I mentioned, and you're able to get an actual sticker which will go in the certificates area. At that point, you'll be able to call yourself a fully certified RoboMon Ranger. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and gain the Alloy fold-out map. Here's what the Alloy province map looks like. As you begin to open up the pamphlet, a map is inside among a number of other pieces of information. Here's a look at the map overall. It says, where will you go next on your RoboMon adventure? Don't forget to visit the museum. There's steep cliffs over here, so watch your step. There's a military base which needs investigating, a great fishing spot over here, salvage spot, north checkout, remember our old camping trips, and a number of other areas here that don't have words attached to them. So lots of different areas to explore. At this point now with the map in hand, the game tells you to go out and make it happen. We are going to try to become a certified RoboMon Ranger. At this point we gain RoboMon 000. The RoboMon we ended up gaining was Sparky, and now we have Sparky here with us, another active RoboMon. Remember, you can have up to 2 active RoboMon going, and each of them will have one of these tokens, and you can see both sides of them here. So when we get into wild battles out there, we're going to be able to decide which side we're on, which each of those tokens after we make our roll during combat. He's been a trusty companion to me, and I'm sure he'll be one to you. Down boy. It tells us to turn to 1202. This now presents us with Gramps' Garage, and it says here, some numbers take you to new maps to explore inside the adventure book. To interact with an element, select a letter and read the corresponding paragraph. You can see there's a number of different letters throughout his garage. So as you can see, there are tie-ins between the adventure book, where we are here with Gramps' Garage, and the map book, which is the overarching world that we're exploring. And whenever you see a page number with an arrow, it always is talking about the page number of the adventure book, letting you know if you're to leave this Gramps' Garage, you're heading out into the map book, which is over here for page 2, and you'll see the corresponding location, in this case, Gramps Mechanics. We might as well interact with some locations here to see what happens in Gramps' Garage. So let's start with A. This one states out of money, and we're talking to Gramps. And it says here if we have less than 3 silver, we can go ahead and have a conversation with him. It says running low on funds, huh? Well, no worries. I know how it is to be young and broke. I know how it is to be old and broke too. Come to think of it, here you go. Don't spend it all in one place. He's giving us 10 silver. Now, silver is the major currency of the game. We're going to take the 10 silver that we have right now. We're taking it in token form, but there's nothing wrong with you actually writing how much silver you have right on your character sheet. And you'll definitely do this when you save the game. But it's your choice as to whether or not you want to have the tokens in front of you or use your character sheet and just write it down, or a little bit of both. There's another interaction point we have with Gramps, and that is we can tell him that we have all 60 RoboMon in our journal, which we definitely do not have. And from what I'm understanding during the crowdfunding campaign, that number is likely to increase. Now, I can't confirm that 100%, but based on the successes of the actual campaign, I believe that's going to be going to a higher number as well. So let's say we're done with A. Let's move on to B and see what the screen is all about. Now the screen uses a jump drive. We don't have a jump drive yet, maybe we'll get one later, but whenever we see a 2-digit number with the 2 number signs in front of it, it means an item's number can be added to it to create a 4-digit entry that leads to somewhere else in the adventure book. So if we had that jump drive, we could kind of go down that road, see how that item interacts with the screen. We'll take a quick look at the bulletin board up here. See, it says Gramps RoboMon Ranger license with a few old photos are pinned to the brown corkboard. In one of the photos, a much younger Gramp is shaking hands with one of the previous directors of the Rangers. Your father is standing next to Gramp with a big smile on his face. Gramp sees you eyeing the photo. That picture was taken 3 years ago before you were born, you know. It wasn't for him. I would have never have joined the Rangers. He made me want to fight for this world when all seemed lost. Gramp clears his throat. He would have been a lifetime's worth of photos proud to see you now. Now we're going to take a look at the bookcase. You look through the seemingly random collection of books on the shelf and you see everything from thin cookbooks to thick tomes about astrophysics. One book in particular catches your eye though, and as you take it off the shelf, a small jump drive falls to the floor. Draw 007 from the adventure deck. We now have a jump drive in hand, so we might as well head over to the screen and use it in conjunction with the number on the screen. So the jump drive 23 will go in front of 47, and that will give us an entry inside the adventure book to look for, so 2347. You load the jump drive into the computer, and after a moment, several folders open up revealing schematics for large robots you've never seen before. Where did you find that? Gramp asks with a smile. Luckily, the war ended before we had to build any of those, but they were going to be our last resort. He stares at the images on the screen. We could never quite get them to work right, though. They were so big that the reactors inside couldn't be stabilized correctly, so one precise hit would blow up the whole thing. At least that's what all the simulations told us. Gramp ejects the jump drive and puts it in his pocket. Wouldn't want this to fall into the wrong hands. So it says to place the jump drive 23 back in the adventure deck and turn back to 1202. We've done everything that we possibly can currently inside of Gramps' garage. There might be more to check out on that screen in the future and other things to interact with, especially with Gramps. But for now, let's leave Gramps' garage. So we'll go ahead to page 2 of the adventure book. It also mentions if it's your first game, we refer back to the first game tutorial, the 2-pager that's included inside of this prototype. And that tells us once we leave Gramps' garage, how do we get to Copper Ridge? Leaving Gramps' garage gets you to Copper Ridge because that's exactly where we are. That's where Gramps Mechanics is located. And you'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, we have a QR code here. If you scan that, it will allow you to listen to music that is thematic to the area that you're in. There is also a little write-up around Copper Ridge, which you can read if you wish, pausing the screen. And you have charts for finding items and other such things all the way along the bottom of the map. Now, way up in the top left-hand corner, you're going to see 4 bubbles underneath the number 10. In this case, there's a color ring around each of those bubbles. And again, these are quite small on camera, but in person, easy to see. The first one on the far left is black, then red, then blue, and then gray. Right now, you're going to go ahead and take a pencil and fill in the leftmost bubble under the 10 in the map book. And that's going to remind you that you've already interacted with this scene, because many characters, locations, items, and all those things have bubbles that you can fill in to help you remember what you've already completed. So you can come back later and not forget what you've interacted with. So I filled that in with a pencil, allowing me to erase it if I ever wanted to reset things in the future, but it's worth mentioning that you use one color of a bubble for your entire playthrough of the game. So for example, you might choose to fill in the black bubbles, or maybe the red or the blue or the gray, whatever you want to do that way. For encounters that give you a quest to complete, you may only want to fill in half the bubble to kind of remind you that the quest is in progress, and then just fill it in completely once you've completed it. And of course, there are characters, locations, items, and other things that you can interact with that don't have bubbles, allowing you to do it over and over and over again. So just focusing on one page of Copper Ridge, there's a whole bunch to look at and see. There's going to be all kinds of things that might draw your attention. The only thing you have to remember is when you want to interact with something, you're always going to take the first 2 numbers of the code that you're seeing. So for instance, if I chose to interact with this individual right here, then it would be 26. And then the page number you're on, that will complete the code to go to in the adventure book. So we know we're on page 2. So if I chose to interact with that individual, it would be 2602. And that's the adventure page book I'd go to and continue on. So lots of stuff to see and do. Now from game to game, you can store quest cards in the save box. You can feel free to write down anything you think is important on the adventure log, or use your own notebook and paper, things to remember coming back to in the future. Now there's a whole section on saving the game. We're going to skip past that right now, but you've already seen me touch on this multiple times throughout this, and you can kind of tell it's not going to be difficult to be able to pack this thing away and then get right back into it again, which is going to be awesome to have quick setup and teardown times. And now we're ready to go and explore Copper Ridge as we see fit, and potentially even go outside of Copper Ridge as well. The whole game world is available to us at this point. Now, it's worth mentioning that most of the adventure book entries for this map in Copper Ridge that you're looking at right now have been designed to teach you how to play the game as you go, instead of spending a whole bunch of time learning rules with your head in the rule book at the beginning, like you do with the majority of board games, which is a style of learning that I really don't like, because you're jamming your head full of rules and things that you're not going to use till later on, and then you've forgotten them and you have to reread them again anyway. This game does things differently. It's going to put things in front of you when you need to know them. So what's worth mentioning here is, yes, you technically could leave Copper Ridge and not read a single thing from anything going on here. You have the freedom to do that, but the game is telling you that there's lots of learning to happen inside of this town. So we're definitely going to interact with everything in here, and then we're going to kind of head outside of it and explore beyond. Now, once you go outside of it, that's when the game really starts to open up, because at that point, if you go to a town, you really don't have this overarching drive to look at everything. You can just go right after the stuff you want to do and ignore the rest. Here in Copper Ridge, we're going to check out as much as we can to learn as much as we can about how the game operates. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up part number 1 of my RoboMon series for a game landing on GameFound in the very near future. All dates and details for that in the video description and pinned comment. Stay tuned as we continue our adventure through Copper Ridge in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.